Hey, how's it going? So the New Zealand election is so close, it's about a week away, and so I thought we could do this political compass test that One News puts out every election cycle. So I did this, 3 years ago for the last election. The link's in the description. I encourage you to do the same. It's really good to help you get an idea of who to vote for, especially if you're not politically inclined. But I guess if you're watching this type of YouTube channel, I guess you probably are. But yeah, I encourage get everyone who doesn't know who to vote for. This is a good way. It's a good tool. Good way to understand who you're going to vote for. So it's a list of 30 questions. You go from strongly disagree to strongly agree. You can also go I don't know, I guess, if you really want to. And then after that, it'll plot you down on this chart to show you where you'd sit with all the different parties. And then you can also look afterwards, I'm pretty sure, to go what type of party represents different things, if maybe you believe in some other things stronger over other things. So it's a really good tool. So let's go through it. So the government should prioritize public transport over building new roads. So that's a tricky one, right? Because obviously roads are important. Everyone needs to drive. Especially if we're trying to encourage EVs and stuff in our current environment, it's important to encourage your road building, things like that. But what the essence of this conversation is, should we be building more lanes on congested roads, or should we be having more buses, more trains, more ferries, things like that, that is going to incentivize more public transport, incentivize people to get off the roads, right? And so I believe in that. I think I do come from a big city. I live in Auckland, so it's easy for me to say, go catch the bus, go catch the train, all that, and I do that, but it's not going to work for a lot more rural people, and so there is a bit of a give and take on that. But I definitely believe more in building public transport opportunities opposed to having more roads. So I'm going to go, what was the question? Public transport overbuilding, yeah, so somewhat agree. How high should the minimum wage be? How high is the minimum wage? It's like $22.50 or something. It's been going up every year. I think it's great how it's been going up. I would say minimum wage should be somewhat higher, about the same, I'm probably in the boat there. I think it's good that it's been going up so much. It's a shame it's had to go up so quickly so much. That's because National wouldn't put it up as much over under their time. So I would like it to be to have a discussion on separating the minimum wage increases to like a metric, saying it goes up with inflation, goes up with average wages, things like that, right? But so I'd say somewhat higher. Urban housing developments in New Zealand should stay within the current city limits rather than expanding into surrounding farmland. So this is a big thing, talking about expanding into the green fields, especially in bigger cities like Auckland, Wellington, and to talk about whether we should be having more medium density within the cities. So, taking down older buildings and building more close knit buildings, more units, more apartment buildings, or should we keep expanding and keep going outwards? And I don't agree with the expansion. You can see in Auckland and the places that people are having to move out to just because there's no opportunity to live in Auckland, right? And that having to go live in fucking Silverdale or way out, way out the city limits and stuff, and it's terrible for the commutes. The people who need to live in the city, and then you have to go. So people who need to work in the city then have to travel so far just to buy a house. Medium density, I believe in much more. So I somewhat agree. How much should the government limit oil and gas exploration in New Zealand? I would say much more. I think it was really good what Labour, the coalition government did in 2017, or since the 2017 election, and stopping offshore mining and offshore drilling for oil and natural gas. But that was stopping new contracts. It was still going on. It is still going on. I think much more needs to be done on this. Climate change is here. We need to be working on it. Obviously, it's jobs. Obviously, it's a lot of money that needs to be looked into in the way to balance that out with things like investing in renewable energy and providing that type of services as well. So there's a lot of give or take in that, but I would say much more. How many immigrants should New Zealand admit? Now, I believe in strong immigration, but the problem is we don't have the infrastructure. The problem is, we're so behind on houses that, where are we going to put them all? And we do need, immigrants in lots of areas, right? And so even if, obviously, I believe that poor immigrants should be allowed in New Zealand as well. but we need to be looking at things like we need doctors, we need nurses, we need dentists, we need all these types of people, and we don't have them at the moment. So we do need much more than what we have, but that needs to be balanced out with increased expenditure in infrastructure and fixing the housing problem. But I don't think decreasing immigration to people who want to come here and live here is really the thing we need to be tackling for talking about housing and things like that. So I do think somewhat more. In my heart, I think many more, but we just don't have the infrastructure. How much tax should corporations pay? Now, it is tricky, right? Like, I do believe in higher taxes for, the wealthy. Now, it is interesting how you balance that out. Should we be increasing the corporate tax rate? I don't really think so. I think the corporate tax rate is fine where it is because it needs to be kind of the same around the world. And, I don't disagree with, the Jonky government decreasing it and Labour not increasing it back. I think it's probably the way to go. It's probably fine where it is. I think, but, I agree with increasing it in other aspects. So, your wealth and your capital gains and all that stuff. And we'll talk about that later, I'm sure. So I'd say about the same. Cannabis should be legal, strongly agree. I think all drugs should be legal. I think all drugs should be legalized, taxed, and regulated. It's a very strong belief of mine. I think that, I'll be here all day if I talk about this right now, so I strongly agree. How much say should the government have in what gets published on social media platforms? Now, it is tricky, right? Because is the argument they should be able to regulate what's there, or is it saying that they should be there to make sure that, lies and misinformation is not spread? And I somewhat agree. I somewhat agree with the fact that we do need to, work on decreasing that. Now, it's going like, well, who are we giving that power to? The government. The government that's going to, have that corrupting influence potentially on, banning dissent from your political enemies or things like that. I don't think we're there in New Zealand. I don't think that's something we need to be worried about. So I do think somewhat more, but I just don't think, I think, the potential is there for the abuse, but that's something we can watch and overcome in the future, I think. I don't think it's the end of the world if we, gave more regulation to the government and then we can pull it back later. To address disparities in health outcomes, Māori Pacific Islander patients need to be prioritized over others with similar conditions on waiting lists for medical procedures. Now, I do agree with this. Now, bear with me. So, this is all based off the recent change with the Auckland Health Boards and Auckland hospitals saying they're going to consider people's ethnicity when doing procedures, talking about wait lists and things like that. Because obviously there's a vast variety of different factors, neediness, time on the wait list, things like that. And what these recent studies have shown is that Māori and Pacific Islanders are they're less likely to be put higher on the list when they're actually needed to. Due to systematic issues like Māori and Pacific Islanders going to the GP less, or they're being told that that they need to not worry about it, or things like that, they're more likely to not receive the help that they need. And so that's been shown, and to mitigate that systemic racism, maybe we do need to go, hey, just give a small leg up. It's not saying that a person who walks in who's Māori and Pacific Islander is going to instantly go ahead of the person who's been on the kidney waiting list for 5 months, right? That's not what we're saying here. The argument is it should be a contributing factor out of a vast level of factors. That's all. So yeah, I do somewhat agree, but obviously I don't agree that just because you're Māori you should get all the kidneys or whatever. But because of these studies and because of this systematic racism that we have seen, and obviously we try to curb it, but how are we going to fix that, right? Just saying that racism is over and that's that clearly isn't working, is it? So because we see these disproportionate outcomes, we do need to come to some sort of other resolution. So I do agree on this. How much government funding should there be for universities in New Zealand? So I do agree with extra funding for students. I don't know if this is saying to universities themselves, in research. I don't really understand what this question is trying to say. I think it's going more students, right? And I think somewhat more. I think that we should be looking into, guaranteed income for students, regardless of parents' wealth and things like that. Just get students the help they need. let them take on less debt and things like that. And it's not just universities; it's also trade schools. It's also any way that people better themselves. Out of high school. Like future education out of high school is so important. Especially nowadays with such a competitive labor market that you do need this extra like tertiary education. Like our high school education isn't enough these days. So I somewhat agree. Fruits and vegetables should be exempt from GST. I like the sentiment. It is a bad policy. So, like, the Multi-Party and the Labour Party both have these policies. Multi-Party want to take it off, like, all food. The Labour Party wants to take it just off fruits and vegetables. It's bad tax policy. It's silly. And that they know it too. That's why they're not talking about it anymore. It's a bad tax policy. They know it's just silly. So the New Zealand tax system, especially the GST system, is very simple compared to other sales taxes around the world. It's the envy of the rest of the world, our tax system. And the issue is they're fucking it up by doing these types of policies. So yeah, I completely disagree with this. I somewhat disagree because I strongly disagree. Fuck it. I agree with the sentiment of decreasing costs of food and things like that, but this is not how you do it. How much government assistance should welfare recipients receive? I think somewhat more. Anyone who thinks that it's easy to be on the benefit is a fucking moron, okay? Yeah, I understand that, like, you have to work, so do I, everyone has to work. Majority of people work in this country, right? But some people need help, a lot of people need help. And at the end of the day, some people are also gonna, scrounge off the system and not do much for themselves. That's not really a great life. It's not a life I envy, sitting your ass and not really doing much with your life and, you're sitting on the benny. It's a small minority of people. People think it's a lot more than it is. It's something that we should be looking at as a welfare thing and as a social, like, helping people to get back into society, to be members of society, to contribute and all that stuff. That's something we should be looking at as a social thing, not as a punishing people for like not being able to do that, right? So people who are in that type of mindset, and like say their parents were doing this as well, they were in a state house, they were on the benny their whole life, how's their kid going to get to know any different? And so we need to be working on that, not just kicking them off the benny and then telling them to live on the street like the National Party policy and the ACT Party policy is. It's stupid. So I do believe somewhat more, especially since like it's unlivable. Being on, like, the unemployment benefit and stuff, it's ridiculous. How much should wealthy people pay in taxes? Much more. We should have a wealth tax, capital gains tax, all that good stuff. I strongly believe in it. I would be fine without a capital gains tax if we had, I'd be fine without a wealth tax if we had capital gains tax 20, 30 years ago. We're able to curb this inequity that we have, especially in housing. Oh my god. Yes, of course I believe in a wealth tax. It's ridiculous the ridiculous wealth that some people have, especially that capital gains is not taxed in this country. It's absolutely ridiculous. How are they allowed to make money, tax free, and everyone, who earns money isn't allowed to do that, I get taxed whatever percent on my income, right? But if I like owned a house that increased in value, if I sold shares that increased in value, suddenly I'm not being taxed on that income. It's clearly income. It's the stupidest thing. And people who don't earn, have this type of money that's simp for these rich people, I have no sympathy for you. Like, why are you like this? It's crazy. New Zealand should reintroduce standardized assessments to measure students' performance in primary schools. I do disagree on this. Probably somewhat, because I'm not that versed in education policy, but what I do believe in is letting the experts, figure it out, and I think that's what they've been doing. I wholeheartedly believe that politicians really need to just get out of education policy. Like National coming out saying all kids need to be doing an hour reading, an hour math, an hour of this every day. It's like, that's the most, like, fucking bumper sticker fucking argument ever. It doesn't make any sense. Like, let the educators work on it. Let them figure it out. You think they're nefarious? You think they want them not to be educated? Just let the people who know what education's all about, not the random politicians who don't know shit. So I somewhat disagree, because from my understanding, standardized testing, isn't that great. Going, like, this is talking about primary schools, but going away from Cambridge and going more into the NCA system, I think is much better. I think, you have seen disparities in the last few years because of COVID-19, because people have had to, do schooling from home and have had these shortfalls. It's not really a fair comparison, is it? But yeah, I somewhat disagree. Youth offenders who commit serious offences should be subjected to harsher punishments. I'm actually really torn. I'm really torn on how to handle current day crime. I think it's a tricky argument for the left. So I've talked about this in previous videos, but the left wing argument for why crime increases or why people commit crime is the argument that if people had a better upbringing, they had better socioeconomic situations, they had more prosperity, they wouldn't commit crime. Like, why do I not go to a rampage, right? It's because I was brought up in a upper middle class household. I went to university, I finished high school. I don't have family that's in prison. It's all these things that contribute to people being members of society. And when you don't have those prospects, when you go to a shitty school, when you don't have family around you to instill good values and things like that, this is what it leads to. And so the left-wing argument is, if we improve those factors, people will commit less crime. I agree with that strongly. But the thing is, that's going to take a while to kick in, right? What do you say to dairy owners now? Let's say the best left-wing government was put in or whatever. Let's say, we're going to pass XYZ policy that's going to tackle these issues. Best case scenario, that is like 10 years away. But these people are still committing the crimes. These people are still doing something. And what do you do about it? I don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't think the answer is putting ankle bracelets on 15-year-olds like the ACT Party wants. I don't think the answer is boot camps that make no sense that the National Party want to do, the things that are proven not to work and will cost like exorbitant amounts of money, like multiple $1 million per offender. Like, it's insane. I think you could just give every one of these offenders $1 million and just ask them, pretty please don't commit crime. It'll probably do a better job than National's youth crime policy, and it'll be cheaper. So yeah, I disagree. I just don't know. Honestly, I'm neutral. I really don't have an answer for current day crime. I don't know. The government should provide free lunches to students in all state schools. I strongly agree. I don't think it should be limited the way it is. I think feeding kids is good. Give food to kids. Now the argument is wealthy areas, they can afford food, but whatever. Some people can't, right? I went to a nice school. There was plenty of people who didn't have a lot of money, but they lived in a nice area. Or they got into a nicer school, and they don't get that benefit. So you want to give poor people worse schools, but then if they work hard, they get their kid into a nicer school, suddenly they're going to be financially punished for that? That's ridiculous. Just help everyone out. I don't know. Feed the kids? Not a crazy policy. How much state housing should the government provide? Somewhat more. Probably much more, because there is a massive waiting list. But the thing is, I think they're building at a good rate for state-home houses. I think Hipkins is right when he talks about the fact that if National was building state houses at the rate that Labour is building state houses at the moment, there wouldn't be a wait list. There would be plenty of state houses. The problem is National sold all the state houses, right? They sold a bunch of them. And so yeah, I believe somewhat more. State houses are important. They're always going to be important. Left-right government, we need state houses. How much of a role should the Treaty of Waitangi have in New Zealand law? Somewhat more. It should be the centre of a proper New Zealand constitution. That's a whole can of worms there. But yeah, I believe it's an agreement that was signed. It's the founding document of this country. It is an ongoing agreement. That National always talks about, like, settlements need to be complete and final. I don't agree with that. I think that there should be final settlement with an agreement that you've signed. You don't get to sign an agreement and then just say, yeah, but it's going to be done now, even though that wasn't in the original agreement. So yeah, I believe somewhat more. The best way to tackle the cost of living crisis is by cutting taxes. Strongly disagree. I think it is very silly and short-minded to talk about cutting taxes at a time like this. It is not the way to do it. Especially like the way they're talking about it, doing it, which is like giving really weird tax cuts, fuck all to lower income people, but much more for upper income. It's silly. It's a bad policy, the National's tax cut policy. At least have the balls to go balls to the wall with a crazy tax policy like the ACT Party policy, which basically want to have a flat income tax rate. I think the tax policy has a 2-bracket tax policy. Insane. But yeah, obviously this isn't the way to go. How much should New Zealand do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions? I think somewhat more. I think we're doing a good job, but we're not at our quota. We have not. We don't like we emit far more than what our population is and what the size of our country is. That's because we have so many farms and so much cattle and things like that. Understandable. So we can still work on it, and I believe somewhat more. Too many offenders avoid prison sentences in New Zealand. I disagree. I somewhat disagree. I believe in the concept of, home detention for a lot more people, because it's a whole thing about what should prison be. Should it be a place of punishment? Should it be a place of rehabilitation, right? And at the moment, I think a lot of people, when they think about prison, they just want to put someone away and lock the key. It's not an answer. We really need to be looking at trying to, punish people for crimes that they commit, get them out of society if they're a danger to people, but then try to get them back into society as quickly as possible. And I think home detention is a great way to do it. It just makes sense. And there's no need to be locking up so many people in that aspect. You can just give people home detention. I don't think putting people on home detention is weak on crime. The government should formally change its name. Formally change the name of New Zealand to Aotearoa. I somewhat agree. Put a referendum in front of me. Maybe I vote yes. Maybe. I wouldn't mind like Aotearoa New Zealand. Like chuck that together. Beautiful. It's not the most pressing issue. If it was on a referendum, I'd probably vote yes. What share of childcare costs should be paid for by the government? Much greater. I think that, things like daycare and things like that need to be much more prioritized and much more paid for by the government, more parental leave. It's very important for kids to be able to go to daycare and kindergarten. It's very important for parents to be able to go back to work if they need to. Because I think people forget about that. That, the money that we put into daycare is just getting people back to work at the end of the day, right? It's getting people to be more prosperous and more productive. And, yeah, that's great, There's a lot of productive people who choose not to go back to work after they have kids because, they can't afford the daycare, or if it's not worth it, right? Because daycare is so expensive. Fucking cover that shit, man. Let's pay it. The government should put more emphasis on adapting to climate change rather than trying to prevent it. I disagree. Obviously we should be working on preventing it. You can adapt to it, and obviously we have to adapt to it. There's plenty of things like, having to make sure that we're ready for natural disasters and things like that, like the flooding in New Zealand that happened earlier this year. We need to be adapting to that. But the things we do, like reducing emissions and things like that, which I think is what it's trying to say. I think it's trying to say, should we be putting all that money that we're putting into cutting emissions just into dealing with, climate change? I disagree. I'm still hopeful that we can do something about climate change. Probably not. I'm a bit of a doomer about it, but I think doesn't mean we shouldn't try. Environmental regulations should be stricter, even if it means consumers pay higher prices. Yeah, I agree. Things like fuel taxes that lead to, that help emission targets, as well as pay for roads and things like that they're doing as well. I think that's good. Yeah, I think environmental regulations are important. And people are very short-sighted when they talk about, they want the cheap dollar now opposed to worrying about the environment in the future, which is very important, especially New Zealand, clean green, it's a big part of our brand. We need to maintain it. We need to look after this country. How much influence should trade unions have in the workplace? Somewhat more. Probably much more. Somewhat more. I'm fine with. I don't think I agree with mandatory unionization, but the work that the Labour Party's been doing on unions, I think it's a great thing. I think they've missed the mark on doing a lot more left-wing things that they could be doing. Their union policies are really good. Their collective bargaining policies, they're great. I think they're really good. You're very similar to Helen Clark, I think, with those collective bargaining laws and things like that passing. I think they're great. They strengthen unions. I love it. Unions are very important in the workplace. There should be a limit on how much landlords can raise their rent that they charge tenants. Strongly agree. I would prefer, just having more houses, to bring down those rental costs. But at the end of the day, landlords are gouging out tenants, and things like rent controls and things like that are important. and we should be looking into your policies like that. You have to protect tenants. Laws against hate speech would place too many limits on freedom of expression. I somewhat disagree. You can see a point where things like hate speech, laws could be a limit on your freedom of expression, but the policies that have passed in the last few years that people like the ACT Party are getting their backs up about is ridiculous. It's literally just expanding the current laws that we have into things like religion and gender identity. That's all it is. So laws that protect race already and gender. So the laws that are already on the books that we've had for probably decades, right? I don't know exactly when those laws were passed, but years, decades, we've had those laws. All they're doing is expanding those protections to gender identity and sexual identity as well. So things like for trans people and for other LGBTQ plus people, and for religion. So talk about after the mosque shooting and things like that, it is important to expand those protections. Yeah, so I somewhat disagree. I don't strongly disagree. I can see how freedom of expression could be limited by laws against hate speech. So I can see that being a possibility. It isn't a possibility now. No one's talking about policies that would be preventing your freedom of expression. The government should guarantee a minimum income for all New Zealanders regardless of whether they have a job or not. I strongly agree. I believe in things like a UBI, potentially, the Greens policy on guaranteed income, things like that. I agree with it. There's a lot of bureaucracy in, the benefit in, MSD giving out money. You could cut a lot of that bureaucracy if you just made it universal, just gave everyone that money. It would be much better. People who identify as women but are assigned male at birth should be allowed to compete in women's sports leagues. Yeah, I think at the end of the day that is up to the independent sporting leagues, not politicians. Trans rights are human rights. They're very important. The real question is they want to ask about like bathrooms and shit, I guess. Like the sports one is more of the grey area about trans rights with talking about fairness in sports. I support I support trans people competing in we're talking about trans women, right? Trans women competing in women's sports. I'm fine with it, but I think it is up to the governing bodies. So should be allowed. So I strongly agree. Did you watch the multi-party debate? Okay, which one was this? Oh, this was the other day. I didn't watch this. So I skipped it, but I've been planning on watching it again later. So this is the one that happened with Rawi Whitey was there, James Shaw was there, Winston Peters, and David Seymour. But I did not watch this. I did mean to watch it, though. From what you heard, I said I didn't watch it. Did I not say I didn't watch it? Did you watch? No, I didn't watch it. Is it from what you saw, heard, or read about the debate? Oh, who do you think won? I didn't hear anything about it. I haven't watched it yet. So regardless of the party you intend to vote for, how likely are you to support the ACT Party? 0%. I hate the ACT Party. National a bit more, just so there's that disparity between National and ACT. The Labour Party, I think a 5. I like some of their policies, but they're not what I like. The Green Party, much more. The bigger issues I have with the Green Party is how they wield their power. Like policy for policy, I'm like 90% there. I love the Green Party. I'll probably be voting for them, but I think they don't push their agenda enough. And I hope if somehow a left-wing bloc was to get over the line this time, that they would be able to do that. I like the multi-party as well, probably less so than the Green Party. I think they bring a little less experience to the table. I think, they have like an 18-year-old running in one of the electorates will probably be an MP. I think, she sounded great in the youth debate that I watched, but, is that the type of person I want to be put into parliament? She doesn't seem to have that type of expertise, but I don't know. They don't seem to be that serious. I do support Rawi and all the work, and Debbie. I think they've been doing great at outside of parliament, outside of government on the crossbenches. I think they have been doing good with what they have, but it's to be seen if they can actually do anything if they had any power, such as a coalition agreement with the Greens and Labour, right? If that was to come to case. New Zealand First, nope, I do not like them. Opportunist Party, I do like a lot of the policies that the Opportunist Party talk about. I think they do have a lot of merit. 7. David Seymour, I do not like him. I did interview him though, and he was very nice when I talked to him. But from what I have seen about him, with how he talks, I do not like him. I kind of like Raph. He's charming. He's the leader of the top party. Rawi, I quite like Rawi. I think he's a good laugh. I think I'll give him an 8. I think he is very funny and passionate. I think he's a very passionate person. Luxon, I do not like him. Winston, I do not like him. Marima, I do quite like Marima. In that debate with her, the multi-party debate a few weeks ago, she was electric. She was doing great. I think she's quite a good debater. Debbie, I quite like Debbie. I don't see a lot of Debbie. You see, I saw her in that debate with Marima as well, and she was good in that. But I think Rawi has always been the face of the multi-party, and so hopefully we can see more of her and her chops in Parliament. But we'll see. James Shaw, I do like James Shaw. He's a bit centrist for my liking in the Green Party, but he does put a more legitimate face to the party, which I do appreciate. I'll give him an 8. I do appreciate that. He should probably be in the Labour Party at the end of the day, I think. But I think he's really good at articulating his policies, but I don't think he has that type of actual radical backbone that maybe someone like Clovis Warbrick or some other members of the party would have. Chris Hipkins, he's fine. He's likable. He doesn't bring a lot of joy to me. He doesn't, when he's come into the Labour Party and cancelled a lot of policies that I do believe in, I do think it's a bit annoying. But I like him. He's a likable guy. Okay, blah blah blah. Can I skip these? These are yeah, I'm gonna skip these. Okay, let's see my results. There I am. So I'm over here, over between the multi-party and Labour, but probably shooting more to the Green Party. But so I'm 80% Green Party, but I'm not that close to them. It is quite unusual how they placed me on this map. It maybe. I'm trying to think. Maybe because I didn't go to strongly agree on a lot of those environmental questions, but who knows? But I think that's pretty much where I think I sit. I would honestly think I sit more with the multi-party than I do the Labour Party, but that is minority there, and top as well, much further up. Obviously, the right-wing bloc, I don't have any favorability to. I don't support them. I don't want Luxon to be Prime Minister. I don't want David Seymour to be Deputy Prime Minister. I don't want Winston in Parliament at all. So, that's just how it is. But, definitely, miles away from them. But, so this is in the comments. I encourage you to go do it yourself. I think, even if you do know who you're voting for, it's to make you think about how different parties are going to be voting on different things and what they support and what their policies are. I think it's good. I guess I did not really have really good answers for Law and Order, right? Because I went neutral here with youth offenders, where the Greens would say strongly disagree. For serious, it's tricky. But who knows? So, I will most likely be voting the Green Party, probably tomorrow, going out to vote. I'm in the Tamaki Makaurau electorate, so I'll be voting for the multi-party candidate. I actually can't remember who was running their campaign there. I think it's, because John Tamaheri ran it last election, but they have a new person. So I'm not 100% what the candidate is, but I do support the multi-party in getting those electorate seats in the multi-electorates. And so, I'd encourage you all to get out and vote. Even if it's not voting for the left-wing bloc that I believe in, I believe everyone should get out and vote. I think it's very important. Get your voice heard. That's it.